If you're burnt out right now and you're just pushing through, you probably need to hear this because what's happening inside your body and your brain is more than just being tired and pushing through. It's physically changing, and the longer you leave it, the harder it is to come back from. Chronic stress and burnout is one of the top 3 reasons people feel exhausted all the time, ahead of iron deficiency, ahead of thyroid problems, ahead of almost anything else your doctor might test for. Mild burnout might take a few weeks to recover from, but severe burnout can be anything from 6 months to 2 years. And some don't recover even after 4. The longer you leave it, the longer the way back. That's why catching it matters. And yet, most people just keep going. I'm a doctor who runs a longevity clinic. My job is to help people feel better today and live longer tomorrow. And a lot of my patients are busy executives who are used to just pushing through. Here's what I keep saying. We can optimize their nutrition, their sleep, their blood work, and everything looks great on paper. But the one thing that keeps blocking them from actually feeling their best is unresolved chronic stress, so burnout. And most of them have no idea how deep the damage actually goes. So how do you know if you're burnt out and you're not just tired? Burnout really has 3 hallmarks. The first is emotional exhaustion. This isn't just like, I had a long day, kind of tiredness. It's a deep bone level depletion. You kind of feel like you have nothing left to give and you wake up already running on empty. The second is kind of like cynicism or detachment. Things that used to matter to you, like your work, your relationships, your goals, they start to feel a little bit hollow and you kind of just go through the motions, like you're doing it, but you're not really there. And the third is a reduced sense of accomplishment. It's no matter what you do, it just doesn't feel enough. The goalposts seem to just keep moving and you're working harder than ever, but you still really feel like you're behind. But physically as well, it's things like sleep doesn't refresh you, you've got brain fog, everything just feels a little bit heavier than it should. So if that sounds like you, really here are 3 consequences that are happening inside your body. The first consequence is that your stress system kind of breaks down. So when you're under chronic stress, your body's main system called the HPA, the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, that stays switched on. So at first, the spikes in cortisol, in stress hormones, help you cope. But after a while, it's kind of like you've almost spent too much time in overdrive. Like the stress levels never let up, and it's like your cortisol rhythm just becomes dysregulated basically, and they can stay persistently high or they can flatten out completely. But at the same time, your nervous system gets stuck in like fight or flight mode, and your body is basically burning fuel around the clock with no chance to refuel. So that's why tiredness feels so different from your normal tiredness. It's because your entire system is basically running on fumes. The second part is that your brain physically changes, and this is the thing that concerns me as a doctor. Neuroimaging studies show that burnout is associated with actual structural and functional changes in the brain. Your amygdala, the part that processes fear and threat, that becomes overactive. And meanwhile, your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for rational thinking, clear decision making, focus, that becomes less efficient. So it's kind of a double whammy. And in simple terms, basically, your brain has to work a lot harder to produce the same output. And that's why everything feels so heavy. And that's why decisions that used to be easy now feel really hard. And the third consequence is that sleep stops repairing you. This is one of the cruelest parts of burnout, is what it does to your sleep. Chronic stress interferes with your sleep quality and your emotional memory processing. So even when you're sleeping, your nervous system can remain partially activated. So it ends up with this vicious cycle that the more tired you are, the more your fight or flight mode is activated. That means the less that you can rest when you do go to sleep, and that whole cycle just repeats. So you wake up exhausted, not because you didn't sleep enough, but because your body never actually entered a proper recovery mode. So the sleep is there, it's just that there's no restoration. And then the fourth consequence is that this damage all accumulates. This is what ties it all together, really. There's a concept in medicine called the allostatic load, and it's the cumulative wear and tear that happens to your body, to your mind, just to your entire system. Because when your allostatic load is high, inflammatory markers rise, your metabolic response worsens, various other things like your body's ability to recover from anything, illness, injury, even hard work, all of that recovery declines. This isn't one bad week. This is your body just continually running up a tab, and then eventually it is time to pay the bill. But this is often the missing piece for a lot of patients. Like, I had a guy recently in his late 40s who was a business owner, absolutely loved his work and really enjoyed it. But he came to me for some help because he was feeling really tired all the time. And we did the usual, and we measured a lot of his biomarkers and did all the usual scans and tests. And he showed that his metabolic response wasn't quite what we wanted it to be. His insulin response to having carbs was quite high. He was carrying a bit of excess body fat. What else? He had some high inflammatory markers as well, and his ApoB was a little bit high. And we did everything to get that under control, but it still didn't really resolve the problem of that tiredness. And it was only when we looked at, well, what's your work-life balance like? What are your boundaries like with staff and protecting family time and all of that sort of stuff? And it was only when we really addressed that and realized that he, despite loving what he did, he was just pushing through and a little bit burnt out, that we started addressing that, and just making some small changes but powerful ones made a really big difference. And those are the kind of changes that I'm going to recommend if you think that you or somebody that is kind of experiencing this problem of burnout, whether it's minor or major. But a really good question he asked me is, why does this happen? Why are so many people getting this? And there are a few reasons why it's so prevalent, really. The first one is that we become what a professor has called self-exploiters. So Professor Byung-Chul Han coined this term, and we've moved as a society where discipline came from the outside, people telling us what to do. And actually, the discipline comes from ourselves. We are the person who's driving ourselves more than ever. And because of that, we don't need a boss anymore to crack the whip. You are the whip, and that's the problem. The second thing is that we're never off. Your phone follows you home, to dinner, to the toilet, on holiday, and we never have a clear stop signal. Third is the way that we work now is that we have an infinite to-do list. So we never have like a clear clock off point that we're done. So that always feels infinite, and our minds are always racing because of that. People are one of the biggest buffers against stress, and because we are digitally isolated now, we have less of that buffer around. And the final thing is that recovery has essentially been designed out of our lives now. We have 24-hour news cycle, we have commutes, we're always on, we're always doing something. Whereas before, we used to have clear points to take a mental break, to take a physical break, all sorts of times to recuperate, which those little things add up over time. They add up to help recover, and not having them add up to contribute to burnout. And it's important to bring those things back in, as we're about to discuss now. So if you're watching this and thinking, this is me, well, there are 3 things that you can do, but it's really important because you have to start treating this as not just a mindset shift, but as a physiological problem that needs a physiological solution. So here are some of the things that you can do. Step 1, you need to get your nervous system out of survival mode. Before anything else works, you have to shift your body out of the chronic fight or flight that it's in. And there are really a few things that you can do. The first is some breathing exercises. Breathing out for longer than you breathe in activates your parasympathetic nervous system. That's the opposite of your fight or flight. It improves something called your heart rate variability, which is one of the best markers really of stress resilience. The second is moderate aerobic exercise, 20 to 40 minutes and 3 to 5 times a week. Not absolutely caning yourself in the gym. That can actually make things worse, but it improves your body's ability to switch from stress mode back into recovery mode. Another thing you can do to get your nervous system out of fight or flight mode is to get outside. Trees release a chemical called phytoncides, and the research on this is remarkable, that when you take them in through nature, it actually helps reduce your cortisol and the activation of the amygdala, like we said before. And this is quite new research, which is pretty impressive really for what it can do. But by far the most important thing is to prioritize rest. And rest doesn't have to be sleep. There's some research shows that there are 7 different types of rest, and people who are burnt out really only get just one of them. Step 2 is that you need to reduce the load that you put on yourself. I mean, what most people do when they're burnt out is they think they need more, like more supplements, better routines, more optimization. But the science is pretty clear. Increasing effort in a depleted state just makes the dysregulation worse. What actually works is subtraction. Remove the chronic micro stressors, the constant notifications, the overcommitment, the unresolved tension in relationships. These things individually are quite small, but when they all add up, they activate your stress system around the clock, and then build what I call recovery oscillation, your natural effort and rest cycles. And we're supposed to act a little bit more like the way lions hunt. Lions have intense bursts of activity, but long periods of rest to recover. And that's really how we should approach our work more if we want to be sustainable for the long term. Your performance depends on cycles: stress, then recovery, stress, then recovery. Use, even within the day, break it up into 90-minute blocks so that you can really focus, but then take real breaks. Take actual days off where you do nothing and your brain can fully recover. That's so important, and something that I found in myself. And take actual days off where you don't do anything or look at your phone or answer emails for an entire day. In fact, while I was recording this, I realized myself that I am experiencing some of the problems that I can see in this stuff that I'm reading. And I actually took a step back. I was meant to record this 2 weeks ago and realized that I was letting myself get a bit too caught up in all the stuff I had to do and just being on all the time. And actually just taking a full day off, I felt incredibly better, immediately so much better. And yeah, you can really see that. You can only really see it once you're out of it and you take a bit of a break to realize just how hard you're pushing yourself and the effect that it's having. And then it's the simple stuff: cut alcohol, eat whole foods, look after the machine that you're trying to preserve. And this is how you bring down that allostatic load that we were talking about before. So stop adding more, start subtracting what's draining you. And then the third step is to just realign with what actually gives you energy. This is the one that people skip, and probably the most important one, right? Because burnout isn't always about doing too much. Sometimes it's about doing the wrong things for too long or not doing the things that energize you. We all know that feeling of when we are feeling really tired or burnt out, that actually just doing some things that we know really give us energy and make us feel good about ourselves, that can be enough sometimes. Being around the right people that recharge you, doing the right activities that really give you joy and energy is sometimes enough just to hit that reset button. I mean, we all know that feeling of how simple change of scenery or hanging out with friends can take us from exhausted to refreshed, sometimes in just a few hours. The research on self-determination, one of the most robust areas of motivational psychology, if you want to call it that, it shows that 3 things protect us against burnout across every domain of life. And those are autonomy, so the ability to have control over ourselves; competence; and relatedness. So feeling like you have control, feeling like you're good at what you do, and feeling like you're connected to people who matter to you. So ask yourself honestly, where does my energy actually come from? What feels aligned versus what feels obligatory? And finally, I mean, this is the hard one, is what identity am I maintaining at too high of a cost? Because sometimes the path out of burnout isn't just doing less of certain things. Sometimes it's doing things completely differently. So look, if you've just been telling yourself to push through, now you know what it's actually doing to your brain, to your nervous system, and to your body's ability to actually recover. Burnout isn't weakness. It's a predictable neurobiological response to prolonged revving of the engine without any time for recovery, reward, or any alignment, really. But the good news is, once you understand what's happening, you can start to reverse it. Not by trying harder, but by restoring balance across your biology, your psychology, and your sense of meaning. So if you found this helpful, share it with someone who needs it. And if you want some more about stress and longevity and all the stuff that helps you live a healthier, longer life, subscribe to the channel, because that's exactly what we're all about.